Many abuse victims are finding that Kentucky law stops them from getting the help they need. WDRB's Tamara Evans explains why in this special assignment report. Tamara?
David, Kentucky is one of the few states in which some victims are not allowed to take out protective orders. Tonight we investigate why lawmakers haven't been able to get the job done.
911 operator Edwards.
It's a call that is not uncommon for dispatchers.
Has anybody been drinking or doing any drugs?
No, but my lip is busted.
Do you need an ambulance?
No, I don't need no ambulance. I just need the police to get out of my house.
A call for help, a call about domestic violence in the home.
My sister had called me talking about, I think her fiance was trying to kill him.
Something many victims can relate to, like Cynthia.
Did you ever fear for your life?
That night I did. I seen a side of him that I've never seen before. It was a look, and it was in his voice. You know, something about his voice that I knew if I didn't get out of there that night, I wouldn't be here telling my story, basically.
In her case, on the night she was physically abused, she didn't call 911. She got help when she went to the ER. She reached out to shelter officials who helped her through the steps of getting a protective order. She was able to get one because she was living with her abuser.
Basically, I just had to fill out a petition, tell exactly what happened, and I done that, and I was granted my EPO.
But for so many others, getting an emergency protective order or domestic violence order, which demand the abuser to have no contact, isn't an option.
Right now, it only reads that you have to have been in a former relationship and living together, have a child in common, married or formerly married, and you have to be able to establish that you actually have lived together.
Tamara Rife with the Center for Women and Families says they often deal with this situation where women in a dating relationship want help and can't get protective orders.
It feels really defeating when that person is not eligible for one, and we have to say, actually, this is not an option for you, and so we've got to talk about some other things that you can do to keep yourself safe, and that may mean that shelter is a safer place for them, and that's not necessarily where they wanted to come.
In Frankfort, there has been a push in recent years for a dating violence bill to include all men and women trying to get help. Representative John Tilley has sponsored the legislation and says in 2013 it made it further than ever.
And we passed the bill from the Senate Judiciary Committee.
It never made it to the floor of the Senate, though, and this past year never made it to the House floor for a vote, making Kentucky still one of the last 4 states to give those in a dating relationship the ability to get a protective order.
Sadly, now we're at the back of the pack. In fact, you could probably make the case that we are the state left standing on the wrong side here.
So why the delay and why the holdup in getting this legislation passed in Frankfort? Tilley says it's been a misunderstanding among lawmakers.
There was at some point some concern that this type of protection was already available to those victims, and that's partly the case, but sadly that doesn't provide the most immediate protection. It doesn't enter those victims in a nationwide network.
It has also been held up by debates, discussions about whether the bill should have a minimum age requirement and whether to include teenagers who can also find themselves in a domestic violence relationship. Some lawmakers were opposed, concerned about this causing problems in schools. Tilley believes the bill should have no age requirements.
I think it's just time that we have to take action. I don't think we have a choice but to give it every effort to pass this bill this time around.
While the push to get this legislation passed continues in Frankfort, Rife says she and others will be there fighting to strengthen Kentucky's laws.
If you need protection from someone who is hurting you, it shouldn't be so complicated.
For Cynthia, the emergency protective order may have just been a piece of paper telling her ex-boyfriend to stay away, but she says it was what she needed to move forward.
I think he got the picture. And I walked away with my life.
If you're in an abusive relationship, we do have a list of resources for help on the button right now, WDRB.com. Tomorrow at 6 and 10, we will examine how police are trying to stop domestic violence victims from becoming victims of homicide. Tamara Evans, WDRB News.
With the number of domestic violence deaths on the rise, Louisville police have a plan to help abuse victims.
WDRB's Tamara Evans explains how they're trying to stop these brutal killings before they happen. Tamara.
Police have teamed up with the Center for Women and Families on what's called a lethality assessment, a simple procedure that could have dramatic results.
It didn't start out, with him putting his hands on me. It was just a verbal abuse. This particular night, things just got way out of control, and I was physically abused.
It's a chilling story that's still painful for Synethia to recount. Abused by a boyfriend in the home they shared. She was able to get help to leave, but some men and women choose to stay, and that can be a deadly decision.
Last year, we'd actually seen a decrease from 2012. This year, we're seeing an increase.
Louisville's Police Chief Steve Conrad says in 2013, there were 6 domestic-related homicides in Louisville. Already this year, he says there have been 10. In March, police say 36-year-old Jacinta Malone shot her child's father, then used the same gun to kill herself. Police said they had been to the home several times. In May, police say a husband shot his wife in the parking lot of a gas station and then turned the gun on himself. We're told the couple was separated.
I think so often people that are in that situation just think there's no way out. And there is.
LMPD and the Center for Women and Families teamed up in late 2012 to try to stop homicides before they happen, using what's called a lethality assessment program.
When police go on the scene of a domestic violence call, they screen that call for high lethality. And so they are asking a series of 11 questions to find out whether or not there is a chance for another incident to happen or for death to happen.
Questions like, has he or she ever used a weapon against you or threatened you with a weapon? Has he or she threatened to kill you or your children? Do you think he or she might try to kill you?
It allows the officer to identify a victim that has a higher risk of actually being confronted with lethal violence in the future.
Tamara Rife with the Center for Women and Families says based on how a victim answers the questions from police, a call may then be made to a crisis counselor to get involved.
We are answering an average of 5 calls a day that are screening high lethality. In the last 2 years that we've done this program, we have spoken to over 3,000 victims who have screened as high lethality.
The hope is that they will decrease homicide rates by almost 40%. So why are the numbers going up?
So far this year, and if we continue at the same rate, I think we'll see an increase not only in calls for service, but also in domestic violence related assaults. So there's more work to be done.
Chief Conrad says it's hard to narrow down why there has been an increase, but he says there is also a fatality review committee where they dissect every single domestic-related homicide to try to figure out what more can be done to prevent them as a community.
In some cases, they had those couples had contact with the police due to domestic violence. In a couple of those cases, they had been recent enough that actually we had done lethality screens. And I believe in at least one of those cases, there was no follow-up. The victim chose not to speak to the counselor.
Chief Conrad says raising awareness and getting victims to seek help is the first step to bringing the numbers down, and that in the years to come, they're hopeful the program will have a lasting effect on victims like Synethia.
And I am just grateful to know that there is a solution, there's a way out of what I was going through. And I'm here today to talk about it.
If you are in a domestic violence relationship, there are ways to get help. We have that information for you. Just go to WDRB.com and click on the button. Tamara Evans, WDRB News.